You're listening to the Hossan Leong Podcast. This is going to be the last episode of the first season of the Hossan Leong broadcast. Podcasts. You see lah. How like that? How to go season 2?
It's not Lelio show,
It's
no?
not Lelio. Yeah, that's fine. And we've got award-winning sound designer and engineer with over 20 years experience in the business. He's done sound for advertising, for broadcast trailers, MTV, documentaries, motion pictures. He's also the host of No or Not. Is that how you say it?
Noornot.com.
Noornot.com. This Freelancer Life, he's interviewed me for some of that as well. All available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And he's...
Ken Delbridge.
Actually, I can't recall when did we first met, no, Ken? Do you remember?
It would have to have been voiceovers. That's pretty much how I met almost everyone.
Voiceovers.
Voiceovers. I started this back in, 2000. So the website that I run is now 20 years old.
Wow.
The voiceovers
website, yeah.
website. That's right. Oh my gosh! But I thought I met you at a social event. I can't remember.
It's a Tatler ball something, is it?
Do I look like a Tatler Ball guy?
Okay. I can't remember. That long ago. Yeah, in the 2000s, early 2000s.
Yep.
Thank you, Ken, for this amazing support you've given to us. I mean,
You're very welcome.
when we approached you to say we're going to try podcasting, I was freaking out because I had no idea what it meant, coming from the radio side of things. So I've learned so much. Now, as an overview of this first season of the Hossan Leong podcast, which was your favorite? Do you kind of remember?
Of course.
And why? So we can learn from the guru.
Yeah.
It's the one where Ben overslept and no one noticed.
Really? Which one was that?
one?
Ben overslept?
Yeah,
Again?
I know. I didn't.
No, but I think a lot of people hear this and maybe don't realize how we piece it together. And we shouldn't share secrets.
Okay.
But,
I think I remember.
Right? And then when you listen to it, there's no hint that he's not there.
Wow.
It's so
Oh,
magical.
yeah, that's right. Man, that's my talent.
Being there without being there.
My goodness. So many years you've been dealing with technology, voiceovers, production, post-production. What exactly is this job scope of yours?
Well, I started out always fascinated with audio, and the original focus was music. Good.
Oh, as in writing music.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't write catchy ditties, so
Okay.
we moved on to, first it was sound design, then it was voice. I came to Singapore because of MTV. I was editing their on-air promos.
Right.
From that, it's sort of just been a transition of just adapting to the marketplace.
Oh,
So
okay.
now MTV's had its amazing heyday in the mid-90s.
I remember those days.
Right.
Wow.
It's still around, but it's not sort of driving the marketplace if you're an audio guy.
Yeah.
And then for a while, it was documentaries. The IMDA had a bunch of initiatives where they were really helping to co-fund a lot of documentaries. I must have mixed maybe about 400 of them. A lot of people around town were mixing tons of them. There was so much production going on. And now it's sort of transitioned again to podcasting, which is largely documentaries without pictures.
Yeah, in a way, you're right. Because I never thought about it as... Because when did podcasts happen around the world?
Well,
Like,
technically, podcast
20
has been around
forever.
20 years, yeah.
Long
It's just
time.
an MP3 being streamed and being downloadable via an RSS feed. So it's been around for ages, and it's technically... The back end, the server end, is pretty straightforward. The thing I've heard is blog, vlog, pod.
oh, okay.
So blogs started out, and anyone, the internet was supposed to free the world. Like everyone
That's
gets a
right.
voice.
That's right.
But the problem is not everyone's got a good voice, or people just don't know how to self-edit. So there are like millions of blogs. And
Which Ben has started out long ago,
In
right?
2003.
2003,
Yeah.
he started
Yeah.
the blogging, he, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, that's right.
And then vlog.
And
Right, that's the video, yeah.
The video
and
one.
then the sound one was interesting because it wasn't called podcasting. There was people just putting up sound files.
Yes.
Until 2004, somebody coined the term podcast.
Yes.
And it became really, really popular then. Before that, it was just sound files. Oh, download my MP3 file from this server. And that's it.
didn't realize
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the pod part came from the iPod.
Yeah,
Because
probably.
that was the first really portable system which had mass adoption across so many
That's right.
different people. And then, iPod, broadcast, together. And I think podcasting actually has a very natural affinity with the radio. In that sense, like I always admire radio people, and you've both been on radio a lot, and like there's a clock, and you got to keep it to the time, and you hand over at exactly
Yeah.
the right time.
Top of the hour, yeah.
Some podcasters, they just run and run and run. There's no time limit.
Right.
Which is just
Which is nonsense. You have to have a time
You have
limit.
to, yes.
Yeah. Unless you just rant and rambles.
you're just going randomly.
Well, I'm very, very impressed by this amazing setup you have here in Splice Studios. So how did Splice start?
Well, I was with a company which, when MTV first came to town in '95, there was still a lot of digital portions of it, but a lot of it was still big machines, Unix mainframes, which ran things,
Yes.
which were really expensive. By the time I think it was the early 2000s, the Macintosh desktop called the G5 came out.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And that was finally it made things available. And there were 3 pieces of software which changed everything. It was FCP for video editors, there was After Effects for graphic designers, and Pro Tools for audio guys. And all of a sudden, if you were working at a post house, you sort of thought, why is management taking 10% or more, but typically taking a lot more than 10%? Like, I should just fire these guys, set up my own shop. And that was the reason we started. The guys who were handling the post-production portion for MTV sort of said, let's just do our own thing. We got a shop house. We were largely boutique to begin with. We focused largely on documentaries and then TV promos. And that kept us busy for a number of years before the marketplace sort of shifted along a little bit.
Yeah, because a lot of people started starting their own production houses. Everyone bought their own G5s.
Yep.
And everyone's on Pro Tools.
It's I think business people call it the barrier to entry.
Yeah, that's
Last
right.
time, if it cost $1 million to put in a proper audio suite with the floated floors, no one was going to attempt to take you on because everyone would lose. But nowadays, like G5, even at its peak, was like 5-6K. And that was a powerful machine. It seems silly now, but I remember when we first did this and the video guys would leave machines to render video overnight.
That's
right.
And if they
That's
came in the
right.
next morning and it wasn't right, that was it. You're like, call the client, we have to re-render. But nowadays, machines render as they go. So
Wow.
the technology has changed yet again. And I think it's good. It's good that technology empowers people, but the problem is it commoditizes things a little bit.
A lot more,
A lot
actually.
of graphic designers, photographers, even audio guys, video guys. It becomes one of those things where clients start to think, used to be $1 million suite. This is now $4,000.
Right.
Surely, don't I pay a corresponding pro rata? It's $20 now. So that's a real problem in terms of getting some sort of value proposition to a client to understand that, well, just because that's cheaper, the experience didn't get cheaper, the artistry didn't get cheaper. That's the same price and possibly more expensive.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a really good point, though. Because
Actually.
I think it cuts across the board for all artists, engineers.
Need to tell our clients.
Yeah, how do we do that now? That's a whole new season of podcasting. How to face your client and tell them you need to get paid.
Artistry costs money.
Now, we look at the podcasting in general, the overview of the podcast. What are the trends today? Where is it going?
There's a number of trends which are moving. If you're talking especially about, and some people pronounce it COVID, I think it's COVID. Corona? So it's COVID? I hear both. Whatever it is.
I've heard on BBC it says COVID, and then there's COVID. And then, I don't know, in Singapore it's COVID-19 with the Malay accent. I don't know why Malay, but anyway. So because I read on one of your articles on LinkedIn that on Spotify there's a lot of entertainment kind of podcast that's very popular.
Yes.
And then on Apple Podcasts, there's all this newsy stuff which is very popular. So different demographics, listen to different outputs.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on these trends?
If you look at podcasting, the first obsessive question everyone asks, how do I make money off this thing? Right? And they use it by saying, well, how do we monetize this? And the answer is, you can't.
You can't really.
Right? And realistically, in order to monetize it, you have to be mega-sized. And I think if you draw a parallel with movies, if you have a big Hollywood movie with stars and a marketing muscle and all that kind of stuff, you can make money. But if you don't, and you're just making much more different videos, like you're a company, like we need to make an advert, you have to pay out all of these costs. And the value comes back to you in a different way, through your sales, through your brand positioning, and stuff like that. And I think for podcasting, given the cost which is typically involved, there's almost an obligation for brands to engage their audiences because typically they get longer time. They don't get 30 seconds. They might get 15 minutes. They might get 20 minutes. You can't just keep selling your product, but you can present something which is of interest, which is related to you, which makes your brand feel good, or it entertains, or it informs your audience. For podcasts, clients, already in the United States and sort of the places where podcasts are really popular, Europe, Australia, the US, they view it as part of their marketing budget. It comes literally straight out of that. You know, we will do this, we will do that. And so when you talk about the entertainment stuff on that, a lot of studios, broadcasters, they literally say, we need a companion podcast because it costs so much money to make an hour of Game of Thrones. But it costs like nothing to get Kit Harington, the actor, to just, hey, we're going to do a one-hour podcast. We're going to talk, you talk. You know, people will feel great because they're listening one-on-one to you, like radio, with that sort of very personal interaction. And like, here's an hour with Kit.
And it doesn't go away because
It stays
radio
there.
is free to air, and this is well there forever,
Yeah.
kind of.
It's time shifting, yep.
Wow. Okay, I didn't think about that. It's quite interesting.
Very interesting. No, it's amazing. I mean, there are marketers with they obviously see podcasting as an avenue for communications. I mean, very early on when I was doing the podcast with Mr. Brown, it's not really a podcast, lah. It's basically just jokes put on air, put into an MP3 file. A condom company came on board because they told us, no, we need you because we cannot do free to air, we cannot do mainstream media. Right. You are perfect, and so they that's how they got us to quit our day jobs.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
Condoms made you quit your day job.
Yeah.
Very interesting. But having said that though, like people are jumping on the bandwagon right now. I think. I mean, maybe we are one of those people. But who are these people that want to come out and do podcasts, and what? And does that affect the, how do I say it? Not the feasibility, but people will not take us seriously anymore because everyone's on it.
You know, you can actually look across all types of entertainment, books or movies or TV. You know, you can't stop people making TV shows. They're not all great. Some are terrible. Some will be cancelled. Literally, someone else will make a decision. You suck. You're out of here.
Okay.
With podcasts, because the cost is so low, you can live on forever. You're just paying your $5 because your ego refuses to let your beloved manifesto, me ranting for 5 minutes podcast go away. It's like blogs. I think the last count, there was something like, 12 million blogs?
Wow.
Which are dead.
Oh, which are dead.
Which haven't, you know,
Which are dead, yeah.
when was the last time
Like
they
mine,
got updated? Actually, when you look at the evolution of blogs, things like Medium is now, that's a blog.
Yep.
People contribute for no money and write these really
Absolutely.
beautiful articles, and Medium makes a bit of money, and it sort of all works out. And you look at it from a business point of view, like, why are people spending time writing and researching? And you realize, okay, it's a marketing thing. You put that on there, and Medium goes, hey, and then it goes onto LinkedIn.
Right.
And then suddenly say, hey, this guy really knows about topic X. And vlogs, it's very popular with influencers.
Yeah, the vlogs.
Yeah, those guys, and IG is another sort of thing, which I noticed like people who are on IG and they don't put any movies of themselves with sound, basically can't present the picture. The
Right.
ones which do vlogs can. The ones which can't, they're just a pretty girl, a handsome boy. They open their mouth and you just realize, so stupid.
Stop it! Turn it off.
So, and podcasting is no different. The barrier to entry is low, so people will do it. People love the sound of their own voice. And even if it's just your immediate family and friends listening for a viewership of 10, some people will go, yeah, cheap land, right? It's like the laptop costs, I'm here, I'll just freeform this. And that's the worst kind. You know, the ones who believe I can make magic. Like the biggest part of podcasting is the pre-production.
Yes,
If
for
you're not
sure.
prepped, it's terrible. And no one does genius podcasts without prepping.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a radio show. I mean, in
Exactly
a sense,
it,
right?
exactly
You need
it.
prep. You need to
Must have
know
prep.
what's
Yeah.
going on. But so let's say if someone who has, who wants to do it, what is a podcaster? What does it take to create a podcast? The drive, the desire, besides the ego?
What's the motivation
Yeah.
besides loving your own voice?
Why do people do it? I still really don't understand it, though. I mean, because I've been hearing it, all our local ones.
Some of it's trendy.
Trendy.
You know, it's kind of
Yeah.
a thing to do. And then, when you get affirmation through feedback and people go, hey, I love your podcast, it's almost like putting fuel on the fire. I must be really good. Let me do another 10. Fair enough. People can do it. I think discoverability is quite difficult, letting people know that your podcast exists.
Yeah.
I mean, there's I think over 900,000 listed on Apple Podcasts.
Right.
How do you find, a specific one? So the marketing side of making a podcast is a really big thing. So, the guys who are happy with 10 listens per month, hey, they're happy. Leave them alone. Let them be as they wish. For someone who seriously wants to we are using this to market our product, our brand, our, I hate the word thought leader. Right. You know, right? They want to position themselves as guys who you hire me for your keynote. Why are you any good? Listen to my podcast. You know, the circle just keeps going around, and that becomes, you know, them monetizing their podcast by establishing themselves as a leader and like, hey, bring this guy up.
Right.
You know,
for live work.
for live work,
for speeches
for
and
conferences, that sort of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've been listening to the Singaporean podcasts throughout, just to listen to what sounds are there out there. And there's this one that's always charting right on top of the charts that's catered to the Malay population. I think, in Singapore.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And I understand a little bit of Malay.
Okay.
And so listening to it, I was like, wow, okay. So the guys laugh a lot for like 10 minutes. And the language, to me, is shocking because, you know, I do radio, cannot say a lot of words, right?
Yes.
So how do they get away with it? Is that a code that IMDA puts to podcasts? Is there one?
Don't quote me on this.
Okay.
But the story I heard, I met them at a podcast panel at the
It's Writers Festival.
Writers Fest, and they're really nice guys. Super nice
sure,
guys.
yeah.
As I understand it, one of them said a naughty word on air. They were told, you apologize, you're fired.
Oh.
And so the three guys said, well, we now have time on our hands, and they just did this. And I think what they've tapped into is that there is nothing that's fun and a little bit edgy. If you're an English language speaker, native speaker, and you want to hear something edgy, there's loads of stuff in the United States.
Yeah.
You know, on every topic under the sun. For the Malay community here, there isn't so much effect. I mean, the smart guys, they tell stories. They've got a radio background. They understand how a show flows.
Right.
They're not just a couple of guys goofing off with bad language. They're really smart guys. They do these stories. They do these topics. They've got some sponsors from
Skincare.
skincare, but also I believe, and I'm going to go to MCCY.
Oh, really?
What does that stand for?
Ministry of
Ministry of
Community,
Culture,
Culture and things
Yeah.
like that.
Because they reach that community really effectively. And then you know, those kids, they're listening to these guys. Again, as I understand it, the episodes they do for them are cleaned up.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
they're pros. You know, they can say like, okay, are we allowed to say bad words today? Nope. For this one, we turn off the spigot, we keep it clean, and we keep it on topic.
Wow.
And that's,
okay.
I mean, they're really talented guys.
Yeah. No, I the quality is good.
Yes, they got their own studio.
You know,
They invested.
And okay, I didn't realize that. That's really interesting. So IMDA's code of conduct doesn't cover podcasts. Then am I right to say that? Or because I was scanning right through the whole. I downloaded the whole code of conduct for free to air.
Yes.
So that covers radio.
Yes.
But I don't know if it covers podcasts because that means, which means it opens us up to a world of topics of discussion of things that we can, you know, delve into that would normally not be allowed on radio.
I did speak to actually two lawyers about this. One, because true crime is like a super popular format. And I asked them like, hey, I got a podcast studio. I got lots of stories. Unfortunately, Singapore, people still kill each other. You know, there are murders happening. Can I do a true crime podcast? And they asked me like, so how do these podcasts work? I said, well, basically something happens and the police screwed it up and they went, what did you say? I was like, but you realize that's how most true crime works because other police forces, for whatever reasons, overwhelmed, lack of technology, you know, some things become cold cases or, you know, they get solved much later. So true crime, you can, but you have to like basically do it once all appeals are exhausted and you have to stick to the facts. And then you think like, well, how can I make it entertaining? Where do I have my son sort of build tension? And it's like, you know, once the murders happen, that's it. Right. You know, like people here don't really go on the run for long. Where are you going to go?
Exactly.
So, you swim across the streets and still get caught.
Years ago, I was talking to another lawyer and we were discussing erotic stories. We did this discussion and said, okay, so what can we do? What can we do? And he said, you're making this in Singapore and you export it and it never comes back, you're still breaking the law.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. That's
correct, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then the second thing was, if it is coming back to Singapore, whatever happens has to end in hetero intercourse.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like you have a sexy story about like, you know, however it starts, it's got to end this way.
Yeah.
It's like, but hang on, what if the story, you know, it's a little quick thing that happens and then, no. They've then got to go somewhere and be like a male-female couple and consummate. Which of course takes the wind out of the sails because like, but that's not real life.
But so you're talking about podcasts?
Well, that was just audio content.
On audio content, okay.
I was going through, I think, iTunes and Audible. So I assume the same thing sort of applies. You can talk about things being hosted on a server overseas.
Right.
Yes, if someone would have put out something which was considered offensive or religiously insensitive, eventually if it gets to that, then the government can simply say, okay, we're going to block that server.
Because if it's religiously sensitive, for any other country would do that, wouldn't they? I mean, iTunes wouldn't put it up.
Well, iTunes would hide behind free speech.
Okay.
Which is why hate groups are on Facebook or on all social media, and they can say, but it's free speech, I'm allowed to say this. So it's tricky. I did an episode with spoken word poets, and they said, basically Singaporeans are very good at self-censoring. They just have a sort of inner radar.
For sure, yes. Yes.
Okay, is this over the line or not? And they'll just pull back. And I think for something like in podcasting, I know there are a couple of political podcasts floating around, but that's the one category I don't touch.
Yeah, no.
So,
us too.
and then beyond that, what's going to what's going to get you in trouble?
Sex.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly. The three most fun things in the world.
Not that you've ever experienced. The last two.
That's the next level. Because I was going through the code of conduct and clause 8.2.8 says programs containing content on lifestyles such as homosexuality, lesbianism, bisexualism, transsexualism, transvestism, pedophilia, and incest. They're all under lifestyles, by the way. Not even considered. They're not even, the word crime is there, but not even there. So they said you can't do this, of course, on free-to-air broadcasts. But let's say we are having, let's say Pink Dot wants to put up podcasts to discuss, talk about.
Raise awareness.
Raise awareness of what's happening in the real world.
Yes.
Are we allowed to do that then? You see, that's the thing, because there's so many voices that need to be heard but are not allowed to go on free to air to talk about it. But if we put a podcast, let's say we talk about
that says it is not a lifestyle.
It's not a lifestyle, for crying out loud. You mean you saying pedophilia and incest is a lifestyle in the code of conduct, which gets my goat really. So
I think that's described as a lifestyle because it's a choice.
Okay.
If you have active. And even that, you can get into controversy. It's free will. In other words, do you choose this? Do you not choose this? Nature versus nurture. I mean, all these debates which have gone on for decades. And I think if you were to really nitty gritty, if you have a small podcast which has 10 listeners, no one's going to bother.
Until someone complains, basically.
But even then, they'll go I have 10 people, and it's me using bots to get my views up. The shame. Yeah. But I think for some of this stuff, it would go down to, is every single thing factual? And I know this from doing documentaries when, especially some of the broadcasters would say anything that's spoken in the narration has to be backed up by two separate references, of which Wikipedia cannot be one, because Wikipedia is a reference website.
Yeah.
Right? Because it'll just reference the same thing you read, so you're cheating. And sometimes various narration sentences would have to go because that's one opinion. We now know, you can go find a website that will say what you want to say, but sometimes it's hard to find two.
Right.
So, if you were to say, we're going to have this debate, you're going to have a lawyer literally on the side, take that sentence out, no. And then it ends up with a very generic, and it's not entertaining. It's no longer fun. And then they're sort of in that case, let's not do it because this sounds like.
Yeah, it's not edgy, it's just bland.
It's bland, yeah.
I think that's what's holding a lot of brands and organizations back in Singapore. I think that's exactly it. What you've we just said. The code of conduct, not just code of conduct. I think the Broadcasting Act, right? We were talking about it covers online content as well now in a very broad sense. They call it a class license. It's only when you get classified as a newscaster then you come under a little bit more specific content regulations. So short answer to all this is that, okay, if you want to talk about these things, yes, you can go ahead and talk about it. But if somebody complains, then then you got to deal with it. So unfortunately, I think that's the landscape at the moment. I think that's the regulation is holding some people back from actually expressing themselves. There's no two ways about it.
Because I think, especially for the LGBTQ people, they have online, as in social media, they've got blogs, they've got websites where people express themselves, coming out, stories, transgender stories, transitioning stories. And those are very interesting to read, but we never hear them being told, like in this situation, for example. So I'm wondering whether that could be a possibility, because it's based on experience, it's based on personal stories, and it's nothing nothing about factual in the sense that scientific or anything. So it's stories of experience. So do you think the government will go, oh, you can't do that because you're promoting an alternative lifestyle?
I think
again, the word lifestyle.
Yeah, I think they when it comes to this, they do have a rather hands-off approach on this. This is one way or one part of the landscape that they're allowing a lot more leeway than your traditional free-to-air channels. So they might be stricter on the free-to-air channel so that they can appease a portion of the population that says, no, I don't want to listen to this. It's free-to-air. It's my right to listen to free-to-air without lifestyle content.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think they will leave the online part alone unless you are actually posing a danger to people, like for instance, or denigrating homosexuals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And bullying them into feeling less about themselves. Now that's dangerous content, in my opinion. That one, I think you can actually complain and say that, no, this is something that's dangerous. You shouldn't be able to put this out by the same measure. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's something to think about because there's so many stories out there of people who have gone through so much and have grown from their experiences that could be worth sharing. That's why I brought that up.
Yeah.
So in language, in the sense that you've already touched on that, it doesn't really matter. Because you can just swear the hell out of everything and nobody will say anything.
Well, we stop ourselves. We don't swear that much.
No, but
we really don't.
it's us, you see.
It's us.
I can't say it. Fish.
Yeah.
I can't.
I think it's our generation. It's just not part of our psyche or something. Even the drag queen comedian like Kumar, for instance, does not use profanities. Nobody realizes that he doesn't use profanities on stage. Zero. It's like he cannot even refer to his own genitals. He says, "My down there." And then you're upside down, how?
Oh, gonna slap in the face. So now, Ken, you've got various podcasts that are out there. Your No or Not podcast. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
I run a studio. I help a lot of clients actually put together podcasts, obviously like this one.
Yeah.
There are different types of podcasts out there. Interviews, group panel discussions, two hosts who have good chemistry interviewing different guests. And it scales across to one of the more, I guess, difficult to pull off types of podcasts, which is what they call the narrative podcast. Typically multiple interviews. And because it's multiple interviews, you have to do the narration/host portion after the fact. Once you've pieced it all together.
Okay.
And in that case, you will do an interview with someone 20 minutes and you might use 2. But that's, whatever serves the story and gets it told in a way which is good for the listener. Everything has to serve the listener. So for that, I always figured that, sometimes the branded podcasts, the ones paid for by brands who want to position themselves and get a halo effect from introducing a really good podcast, they almost always follow this format. So I started it because I needed to know, like, if someone comes to me and says, hey, we want to do that, I got to quote correctly. If I tell them, like, you want to do 9 interviews in this thing? Okay, great. We need to schedule 9 interviews. We can't do it by tomorrow. There's no rush on this. It takes time. It takes time to piece it all together, to edit it, to get everything approved. So I sort of picked a topic which I felt would be, in my head, unappealing to brands, which is local artists and artisans. Right? Because it shouldn't be, but realistically, I think Ben's shaking his head because he knows, like, no brands like give money to them. So I started doing that, and I've interviewed all sorts of weird people. There's a woodcrafting community in Singapore.
Seriously?
Yes.
Wow.
I've met tattoo artists. I've met musicians, the spoken word poets, some authors. And right now I'm doing food. So some of the and I guess, chefs are artists in their own way.
Yes, of course.
And it's actually become something that's really fun to do. I meet some really strange people.
But there's a lot of research you got to get into then. I mean, just to get out there and find it, right?
A little bit. A lot of times, if you pick the right guest, it actually sort of almost does it by themselves. Because you're literally going to someone who is an expert in the field. I try to do my research, but obviously some stuff I just don't know about. I'm not a big cheese guy, but we've got an episode coming up about cheese. So How to do that? Find the smartest cheese person in town.
Oh, so why are you asking us questions about cheese the other day?
Yes. You're not the smartest cheese guy in town. Just
No, I'm not. I'm definitely not. I can't describe the cheeses.
Is Kraft cheese?
Don't cheddar with me.
That's a good one.
I knew that was coming. Now, what are your favorite podcasts that you listen to, Ken?
Lately, I've been listening to ones which are really good on, unfortunately, COVID-19. So that would be The Daily and
All right.
the Journal from Wall Street Journal. There's one from Channel News Asia, which is
Okay.
called Heart of the Matter.
Is this the Steve Lai one? No.
Steve Lai one is a Good List, Bad List.
Okay.
Jamie Ho does the other
Jamie
one.
Ho.
So he's basically the boss of the news division.
Right.
It's very measured, sensible. It's not the hysterical, typical thing you get out of America. Like, we're all going to die. It's like, let's just calm down and let's be sensible about this. Wash your hands. And for some people, it seems that's quite a outlandish idea. Wash your hands all day long.
What do you mean? Exactly what your mother told you. And what about you, Ben? What do you listen to?
I actually don't listen to that many podcasts, but I do tune into NPR a lot.
They do some great
there's
stuff, yes.
A lot of great stuff over there. So I don't actually get stuck into one particular audio story that they've put up, but it's so well produced.
Yes.
You get really, it's a standard bearer for audio stories and podcasting. Yeah.
But do you think then, if people listen to a really good produced podcast, would they go, it's too fake? Or, some people don't listen to just random rantings.
Well, I think there's the difference. You can hear it. The yardstick is good audio, unfortunately. Some guys are recording in really reverberant rooms, and they're too far away from their laptop, so it's picking up a lot of room noise. And then you're just like, wow, after a while it becomes really hard just to sit through it, regardless of how good the content is. So I think once you reach a certain minimum barrier, then beyond that, then it's the content.
Okay, so it's basically just prep, really.
Prep,
Yes, prep is so important.
We have
quality.
like 4 pieces of paper on the table in front of us, so that's prepping.
Yeah, try not to rustle my paper. Now I'm very stressed. So for people who want to listen to your podcast, where can they go to?
Well, it's called No or Not. It's on the website noornot.com, and you can find it on all of the various major apps like Apple, Google, Spotify, all of them.
Okay, fantastic. Well, and any last nuggets of advice you want to give the both of us and Jem, our producer? Because we're thinking of going to season 2 right now. So
Definitely should.
Okay, really? Yeah, because I've listened to myself and I go like, oh my gosh, I sound terrible because
need to warm up.
Maybe. The first few episodes I was stammering, I was not sure what I was going to say, and
I was spacing out.
you were spacing out, yeah. We should start at night. So what nuggets of advice you would give us?
I think people should speak slower. Especially because, enunciation, the quicker you go, the less time you have to clearly enunciate all the words that you're trying to say. If it's something which the listener already understands the topic, any sort of like topic-specific buzzwords they get. If it's something they don't understand, for example, like, sometimes when you're talking about play stuff, blocking things off, to someone who isn't in the industry, like, what is he talking about?
Okay.
Right.
So, and if you say blocking off too quickly, it just becomes unintelligible. It's a couple of syllables. And people tell me I speak too fast. So I'm completely guilty of the same problem. When I do my podcast, I always slow down.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
tip. Because
that's what we do on radio. Actually, we
Yeah.
slow down a lot because
I don't, that's why.
maybe that's why you're on the morning show. I'm on the night show.
Yeah, I ramble so fast, and I listening to the past episodes, I realize how bad my pronunciations are. Like my enunciations are like it's like mud, So yes, so having heard myself, I think that's the next step to improve our podcast for season 2.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Ken, for
very
having
welcome.
us, and
Yes.
we look forward to season 2 then.
And it's time now for
More
more topics from a
fishbowl.
fishbowl. This fishbowl keeps giving. And if you could be an animal for a day, what would you be?
I think, okay, people always call me a meerkat. Because I'm always like doing, like popping my head up from behind.
Yes, I see it now.
Right? Like looking very shocked and playful all the time. But then people always also say that, oh, you're very much like a Jack Russell. I'm like, how rude. That means high intensity, hypertension, barking, non-stop yapping dog. Maybe younger lah when I was younger. Yeah.
I know. Myself, I don't know. I don't think anybody has actually referred any animal to me. Objects maybe, but not animals.
Objects? How rude. Like
Stone.
what? But that's how we feel after a big bowl of bak chor mee anyway.
Yeah,
A bit
that's
stoned.
right.
Very
Yeah.
heavy. Hey, if you are listening in right now and people have referred you to some kind of animal, you want to share this with us, what kind of animal are you? Or have people described you as? You can always subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to receive notifications. And of course, we'd love to hear more from you as well. Give us your comments. Who would you like us to interview perhaps in the future? You never
Yeah.
know. You might get Chris Hemsworth. Hey, don't say never. Huh?
Never
know.
say never.
Right, Chris? Yeah. All right. Drop us an email, podcast@doubleconfirm.sg. Yeah, Chris. Yeah, come on. The Hosan Leong podcast is brought to you by Double Confirm Productions. Hosted by Hosan Leong and Benjamin Lee. Produced by Ann Lee and Jem Toh. Post-mixed by Ken Delbridge and recorded at Splice Studios, Singapore.